Captain Elijah Brooks had spent the last 14 hours coordinating emergency response efforts for the state during a devastating flash flood that swept through several rural counties. As the highest-ranking field officer in the State Emergency Operations Division, he was exhausted but proud. His team had successfully evacuated over 200 residents from flood-prone zones. Dressed in his crisp navy blue uniform with gold insignias gleaming on his chest and sleeves, Elijah was finally heading home in his state-issued SUV when fatigue nudged him to pull over for coffee at a gas station just off Highway 17. It was a quiet town, the kind where everyone knew everyone, but that didn't concern him. After all, he was in uniform, clearly identified, and had no reason to expect trouble. As he walked out of the gas station, steaming coffee in hand, he barely noticed the white patrol cruiser parked nearby until its red and blue lights suddenly flashed. Two white officers exited the vehicle, walking toward him with tense expressions and their hands near their sidearms. Confused but composed, Elijah nodded and offered a polite greeting. "Evening, officers." "Something wrong." Officer Larkin, the older of the two, ignored the pleasantry. "We got a call about a stolen government SUV. You match the description: blackmail, state plates, and what looks like a fake uniform." Elijah's brows furrowed. "Fake? I'm Captain Elijah Brooks. I just left the emergency command center in the Capitol. Here's my ID and badge." But Larkin didn't even glance at the credentials. Instead, he motioned to his partner. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Elijah stood his ground, stunned. "Are you seriously detaining a decorated officer in full uniform?" The second officer shrugged, stepping forward. "We're not taking any chances." The cold steel of the handcuffs locked around Elijah's wrists, and a small crowd began to gather. Some pulled out phones. Elijah said nothing, but inside he was burning, not with anger, but with resolve. They didn't care about his rank, his uniform, or his service. All they saw was a black man, and they were about to learn how big of a mistake that was. Inside the cramped back seat of the patrol car, Captain Elijah Brooks sat with his wrists cuffed behind his back, his shoulders tight, with a familiar mix of disbelief and disappointment. The irony was bitter. After years of dedicated public service, responding to disasters, coordinating life-saving evacuations, working side by side with law enforcement across the state, he now sat like a criminal humiliated in full uniform because two officers refused to look past his skin color. Outside, Officer Larkin stood with a smug expression, running the plates of Elijah's state-issued SUV, while his rookie partner typed Elijah's name into the system with shaky fingers. When the dispatcher responded, the reply was swift and definitive. "Vehicle registered to state Emergency Operations Division. Officer ID matches Captain Elijah Brooks. Clearance level, high. Do not detain." The rookie blinked, turning to Larkin. Dispatch just confirmed he's who he says he is." Larkin barely looked up. "That doesn't prove anything. He could have stolen the uniform and ID. We'll sort it out at the station." Elijah tilted his head slightly, his voice low but calm. "You've received official confirmation. You're detaining me without cause. That's unlawful." Larkin scoffed. "Don't lecture me, Captain. You think you're above the law because you're wearing a costume?" He emphasized the word with a mocking grin. "Let's see what the chief thinks when we bring you in." Elijah let out a slow breath, restraining the surge of frustration rising in his chest. He had dealt with difficult officers before, but this wasn't just incompetence. This was targeted, deliberate. It wasn't just about ignoring protocol, it was about asserting power. And it was a power they believed his uniform didn't deserve to carry. He stared at the locked door beside him, gathering himself. He hadn't wanted to escalate. He had hoped the situation would resolve with professionalism and accountability. But now they had crossed a line, detaining him despite confirmed credentials, ignoring a verified dispatch report, and manhandling a high-ranking state official in broad daylight. With his hands cuffed awkwardly behind him, Elijah shifted just enough to activate the voice command on his state-issued smartwatch. "Call, Governor's office. Priority line 1. A chime sounded. Seconds later, the secure line connected. "Governor's office, this is Director Stanton." Elijah didn't waste a second. "This is Captain Brooks. I've been unlawfully detained by 2 local officers on Highway 17 in Jefferson County. I need immediate intervention." The voice on the other end grew sharp. "Confirm, Captain. Assistance is already being dispatched. Stay where you are." The call took less than 30 seconds. Back in the front seat, the rookie officer stared at his screen again, rereading the dispatcher's confirmation. "Larkin," he said, now visibly nervous. "He's on a watch list of protected state personnel. We're supposed to notify command, not detain." Larkin waved him off. "That's protocol when the ID is real. I don't trust it." The rookie hesitated. "But what if it is real?" Larkin glared. "Then it's above our pay grade. Let the chief sort out." Moments later, a call came through the radio, one that made both men freeze. "Be advised, multiple black SUVs inbound from Capitol Security Division. ETA, 2 minutes. All units on standby." The rookie looked at Larkin in horror. "Did you just hear that?" Larkin's face went pale. "What the hell is Capitol Security doing here?" Elijah, still seated in the back, finally spoke again. "I told you I was Captain Elijah Brooks. You chose to ignore my badge, my ID, and your own dispatcher. I tried to warn you." Larkin turned slowly toward the back seat, no longer smug. "Who did you just call?" Elijah met his eyes coldly. "The governor." The screech of tires shattered the tense silence in the parking lot as 3 sleek black SUVs rolled to a halt, flanking the patrol cruiser on both sides like wolves surrounding prey. Each vehicle bore the emblem of the Capitol Security Division, an agency that only moved on direct orders from the governor's office. The officers inside the cruiser sat frozen, Larkin's knuckles white on the steering wheel, and the rookie pale, his hand hovering near the door handle, as if unsure whether to run or throw up. Captain Elijah Brooks remained calm in the back seat, eyes forward, his demeanor unshaken. He didn't have to say a word. The call had been made, and now the consequences were unfolding. Doors burst open in unison. Out stepped a state marshal, 2 senior legal advisors from the governor's office, and Elijah's direct superior from the Emergency Operations Division, Colonel Reeves, a tall, silver-haired man whose presence alone could silence an entire command room. He wasted no time. Striding toward the cruiser with the force of authority radiating off him, Reeves pointed sharply. "Get him out of the car. Now." Larkin opened his mouth, but the marshal cut in. "I said now." The rookie officer scrambled to unlock the back door, fumbling nervously with the cuffs. As the steel clinked free, Elijah stepped out slowly, rolling his shoulders as the blood returned his arms. Reeves nodded at him. "You all right, Captain?" Elijah straightened his uniform and nodded. "Physically, yes." His voice was low but laced with steel. "Professionally, this is beyond unacceptable." Reeves turned to the 2 officers. "Do you understand who you just unlawfully detained? This man is not only a high-ranking officer, he was returning from overseeing a state-level emergency response. You ignored his identification, the dispatcher's confirmation, and now your careers are over." Larkin, still trying to regain control, snapped, "We had a tip about a stolen SUV. It matched his vehicle. We had to investigate." The governor's legal advisor stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "You received confirmed identification and credentials verified by dispatch. Instead of following protocol, you detained him without cause, refused to release him after confirmation, and escalated the situation by transporting him in cuffs. That's not investigation. That's unlawful detainment and racial profiling." The rookie looked like he wanted to disappear into the asphalt. Larkin's voice rose, desperate now. "How were we supposed to know he wasn't impersonating, he wasn't?" Reeves snapped. "And you knew it. You just didn't believe a black man in a decorated state uniform could be the real thing." The weight of those words hung in the air. By now, more people had gathered. Bystanders had recorded the entire scene. News vans were arriving, tipped off by the social media posts that had already gone viral. Elijah stood tall, surrounded by colleagues and cameras, while the 2 officers who had cuffed him now stood awkwardly under the blazing sun, being read their suspension notices on the spot. Colonel Reeves turned back to Elijah. "We'll be releasing a statement within the hour. The governor wants to meet with you personally, and rest assured, this incident won't be buried. It's going to set a precedent." Elijah nodded, his face expressionless. "It should." As the Capitol security team escorted him to one of the SUVs, Elijah cast one final glance at the two officers who had tried to humiliate him. They looked small now, their arrogance evaporated, their futures crumbling by the minute. One call had changed everything, not just for them, but for every officer who ever thought the uniform only belonged to a certain kind of man. Justice hadn't just arrived. It had pulled up in 3 black SUVs with the full weight of the state behind it. By sundown, the entire nation knew Captain Elijah Brooks' name. The videos, first uploaded by a teenager who'd been pumping gas nearby, spread like wildfire across social media. Millions watched in stunned silence as the footage showed a black man in full uniform being handcuffed by 2 white officers who ignored his badge, his ID, and even the voice on the dispatch radio confirming his identity. The hashtags #InUniformWhileBlack, #CaptainBrooks, and #racial profiling trended globally within hours. Public outrage surged. Local protests erupted in Jefferson County. Signs reading "Respect the Uniform" and "Justice for Captain Brooks" filled the streets. Veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and police reform advocates demanded immediate action. Governor Leland, recognizing the gravity of the situation, held a press conference the next morning. With Captain Brooks standing beside him, the governor's tone was firm. "Captain Elijah Brooks has risked his life for the state, coordinating disaster responses and saving countless lives. That he was treated as a criminal while wearing the uniform of public service is not just an embarrassment, it's a disgrace." He went on to announce a state-led investigation into patterns of racial bias in local law enforcement agencies, promising new training protocols and disciplinary reforms. "This will not happen again, not under my watch." Meanwhile, the Jefferson County Police Department scrambled to contain the fallout. Both Officer Larkin and the rookie were placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation, though many saw that as too little, too late. Internal Affairs uncovered that Larkin had been the subject of multiple previous complaints involving discriminatory behavior, complaints that had been quietly dismissed or buried. The truth was coming to light, and with it, the department's reputation was unraveling. Through it all, Elijah remained composed. He refused interviews and declined to comment publicly, choosing instead to let the truth and the footage speak for itself. But inside, he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about every black professional who'd ever been questioned, every officer who wore a uniform only to be doubted, every citizen who feared a routine stop might become a turning point. This time, the spotlight was on, and the world was watching. The internal investigation concluded within a week, but its consequences echoed far beyond the Jefferson County Police Department. Both Officer Larkin and his rookie partner were officially terminated for misconduct, abuse of authority, and failure to follow verified identification protocols. Larkin, whose record revealed years of quietly dismissed complaints, became the symbol of a long-ignored systemic problem, an officer empowered by arrogance and unchecked bias. The rookie, though visibly shaken and less defiant, was not spared. The department's leadership under intense public scrutiny had no choice but to make an example of both men. The termination was swift, final, and public. Captain Elijah Brooks, meanwhile, returned to duty with his head held high. The governor personally honored him with a formal commendation for his service, not only for his work in emergency operations, but for how he handled the ordeal with calm professionalism and dignity. Cameras flashed as Elijah stood on the steps of the Capitol, not as a victim, but as a symbol of strength. "What happened to me," he said, finally breaking his silence, "happens to black men and women every day, except most of them don't have a uniform or a title to protect them. We must fix a culture that presumes guilt over service and color over character." His words were carried across every major network, shared in classrooms, leadership briefings, and law enforcement seminars nationwide. Reforms were rolled out, bias training was mandated statewide, and departments were instructed to revise stop and identification procedures to prevent future violations. Elijah wasn't just a face on the news anymore. He had become the reason policies changed. Larkin never recovered from the scandal. No department would touch his application, and his name was forever linked to one of the most publicized cases of racial profiling in state history. The rookie moved states, hoping to start fresh, but the internet never forgets. One call from a wrongly handcuffed black man had not only ended careers, it had sparked a movement for accountability. And it all started with the refusal to see a man in uniform for what he truly was, a leader.